Thank you so much for coming out on this wretched night. It's time for the wonderful W.C. Fields line. It ain't a fit night out for man nor beast. I'm going to say a few things about our cast tonight. There are 4 people in the cast. 2 of them are professional actors. Paula Langton, who has taught all over the world. Among other things, she's a professor emeritus, or emerita, rather, of the Boston University School of Theater. She has been a global leadership fellow at the World Economic Forum. She's worked with...
That's not true. I taught.
Oh, you talked to them.
I taught them.
Oh, you taught them. You were their teacher.
Global leadership.
Wonderful. Better and better. But she is a global leader. She's worked with all the theater companies that we know locally, Shakespeare and Company, Actors Shakespeare Project. She was also in a documentary called Giving Voice, An Actor's Journey with Kristen Linklater. Those of you who know the theater know that Kristen Linklater was the woman that taught a generation of American actors how to speak Shakespeare's language, along with Tina Packer out in Western Massachusetts. She's a member of the Actors Equity, Screen Actors Guild, Speech Trainers Association. She's worked with all our local companies, the ART, the Actors Shakespeare Project, the Company of Women, the LA Shakespeare, the New Rep, Boston Playwrights Theater, and the Poets Theater. So here we are. She's a wonderful actress, and you're going to enjoy her performance immensely. She hangs out with a guy named Ken Cheeseman. They've been married for many years, and they live in the little-known town of Becket, Massachusetts, out in the west. It will now become famous. There's a wonderful arts center. We're hoping to get invited to the Becket Arts Center. Ken Cheeseman has been not just on the stage, all the great local companies, including Yale Rep, Long Wharf, ART, the New Rep, Gloucester Stage, Actors Shakespeare Project, the Huntington Lyric Stage. He's also done a lot of film and TV work, including he was in Shutter Island, Mystic River, Next Stop Wonderland. He's been on Law and Order and The Good Wife, one of my favorite series, and also in the award-winning HBO series Olive Kittredge. He and his wife Paula also are involved with a theater program on the little island of Stromboli off the coast of Sicily. And it's called the Festa Teatro Ecologico on the volcanic island of Stromboli. So they have a volcanic past. Let me get to this. Our third actor, Lloyd Schwartz, is Professor Emeritus of English at UMass Boston, a member of the Poets Theater Advisory Board, and a frequent contributor to NPR's Fresh Air with Terry Gross. You know Lloyd's voice because he does the music reviews on Fresh Air. You'll recognize it the minute he opens his mouth. He's the author of many books of poetry. He is also one of the great proponents of the poetry of Elizabeth Bishop. He edited the collection called Elizabeth Bishop and Her Art. He also adapted for the Poets Theater his first book of poems. This is back in 1994, I believe. His first book was called These People. And we, the Poets Theater, did a production of it down in Beacon Hill. It was quite lovely. It was a great delight for me to be in the cast because I got to sing in Yiddish. Lovely little song. Auf den Prickpitschik brennt der Feuer und den Stipp ist heiß und der Rebella mit seiner Kinderlack lernt Aleph Beis. I love that song. I didn't. You notice I didn't sing it, but I'm David Gillette. I'm a professor emeritus of English at Simmons University. For many years it was Simmons College. Now it's Simmons University. I am the literary director of the Poets Theater, and I'm an old Newton Free Library hand. We've done many things in this room, and I really appreciate Ellen Meyer's work in bringing us here tonight. Also, this is being filmed by our dear friend, Bruce Petchik of Seven Generations Video in the back. We did a wonderful show with him a couple of years ago. On the first anniversary of the death of Leonard Cohen, we filled the Somerville Armory. And there was live music and live poetry and recitations. And the hair in the audience was tending toward grayish. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house when the show was over. Bruce took multiple versions of the tapes of that night and put together a wonderful, professionally edited show because he's a professional editor. All right, that's the people that you'll be hearing from tonight. But let me say a thing about the poem itself. Why are we, the Poets Theater, staging a reading of this old warhorse of a poem that dropped like a Ukrainian bomb on the bridge that was supposed to link Victorian and 20th century poetry in English? There was supposed to be a smooth transition, but some things intervened, the First World War for one thing. And according to the poet and teacher Mary Carr, almost nobody under 50 in this country has read The Wasteland. Almost none of them know about it. Is it packed with gloom and a profound sense of loss? Yep, sure, that's true. But it's also got a strange beauty, a haunting music. So we ask you to listen carefully. As Eliot's biographer Peter Ackroyd said, Eliot cultivated an auditory imagination. So kindly open your ears. T.S. Eliot had a long career as a poet, playwright, and critic. His two most famous poems, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, which many of us learned in high school, and The Wasteland, were both written before he was 35. He was born in Missouri, but found himself later more English than the English. He joined the Church of England. He adored tradition. And like many writers of his generation, I'm thinking now of Ezra Pound and William Butler Yeats, drifted further and further to the right as he got older. In fact, like many of the writers of that generation, the Eliot Pound, Yeats generation, they ended up yielding to the siren's song of racial purity or spiritualism or fascism or anti-Semitism and other comparable forms of really nasty mumbo-jumbo. But not in this poem tonight. This is a poem of someone who comes out of the it's post-First World War. So The Wasteland is a young man's poem, born of the high flowering of what we might call modernism. The bits and pieces of this poem, what he calls these fragments, are assembled like one of those pre-World War I collages that Picasso and Braque and Juan Gris and Picabia were doing 1913, just before the war. After the war, after that incredible carnage of that war, if you did a collage, the bits and pieces that you would find lying around you would be quite different than in 1913. Those of you unfamiliar with the poem may wonder how all the various parts or fragments fit together, if in fact they fit together at all. That's for you to discover tonight. The poem also presents a wide range of voices or characters, which makes it a lot of fun for a group of actors to play with, as you will find out. All four of us have acting experience, and two of us, Lloyd Schwartz and myself, are poets. So get ready to meet lots of voices from the period in the wake of World War I. People in the early 20s had been traumatized by the wholesale butchery of a recent war. They had seen thousands, even tens of thousands, die in a pandemic. They had seen social beliefs change at a dizzying pace, and old institutions found incapable of meeting the needs that people felt. Wait a minute, am I describing our moment? Huh? So let's take us back 100 years. This is the 100th anniversary of The Wasteland. An early draft of the poem was entitled, borrowing a phrase from Charles Dickens, he do the police in different voices, which it's like someone telling you what happens in a crime movie that you haven't seen by voicing all the characters. That voicing is our job this evening. We invite you to watch us get immersed in this poem and invite you to join us. Yes, you will hear some foreign phrases in this poem, mostly German, French, and Italian. And if you really want to know what they mean and where they come from, I suggest you read the notes that Eliot himself had printed at the end of the first edition of the poem. Attentive listeners will hear echoes of Shakespeare from here and there, largely from Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, and The Tempest. But you don't need to be an English major or have a PhD in comparative literature to enjoy this poem. Finally, a short reflection, and then we're going to begin, about what happens when poets and actors work together. It has been really exciting for the four of us to bring two professional actors, Ken and Paula, together with two poets, Lloyd and myself, who are used to reading solo. The actors have been charged up, electrified by being asked to voice scripts with unusually powerful language. And the poets have found their ordinary speaking voices drawn to something closer to music as they tune their vocal instruments to meet the tonalities and energies of the actors. So for me, this has been the essence of what a poet's theater should aspire to, with the two camps, poetry and theater, joining forces and being mutually changed in the process of finding common ground, or rather, inventing a new landscape where grand language can shine.
The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot.
For Ezra Pound, Il miglior fabbro.
1. The burial of the dead. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnberger Sea with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in the sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar kein Russen, stamm aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousin's, he took me out on a sled. And I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains there, you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter.
What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock.
Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust.
Frischwetterwind, der Heimat zu, mein Irischkind, wo weilest du?
You gave me hyacinths first a year ago, They called me the Hyacinth Girl.
Yet when we came back, late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak, and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing. Looking into the heart of light, the silence.
Öd und leer das Meer.
Madame Sosostris, the famous clairvoyante, had a bad cold. Nevertheless, she is known to be the wisest woman in Europe with a wicked pack of cards.
Here,
She said,
here is your card. The drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look. Here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Here is the man with 3 staves. And here the wheel. And here is the one-eyed merchant. And this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. I cannot find the hanged man. Fear death by water. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equitone, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days.
Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge, so many. I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, flowed up the hill and down King William Street, to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours, with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9.
there I saw one I knew and stopped him crying, Stetson, you who were with me on the ships at Mylay, that corpse you planted in your garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence, that's friend to man, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecteur, mon semblable, mon frère.
2. A game of chess. The chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed on the marble, where the glass, held up by standards wrought with fruited vines, from which a golden Cupidon peeped out, another hid his eyes behind his wing, doubled the flames of 7-branched candelabras, reflecting light upon the table as the glitter of her jewels rose to meet it. From satin cases poured in rich profusion, in vials of ivory and colored glass, unstoppered, lurked her strange synthetic perfumes, unguent, powdered, or liquid, troubled, confused, and drowned the scents and odors stirred by the air that freshened from the window. These ascended in fattening the prolonged candle flames, flung their smoke into the lacqueria, stirring the pattern on the coffered ceiling. huge sea wood fed with copper, burned green and orange, framed by the colored stone, in which sad light a carved dolphin swam.
Above the antique mantel was displayed, as though a window gave upon the sylvan scene, the change of Philomel by the barbarous king, so rudely forced. Yet there the nightingale filled all the desert with inviolable voice. And still she cried, and still the world pursues, jug, jug, to dirty ears, and other withered stumps of time were told upon the walls, staring forms, leaned out, leaning, hushing the room enclosed. Footsteps shuffled on the stair. Under the firelight, under the brush, her hair, spread out in fiery points, glowed into words, then would be savagely still.
My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you are thinking. Think.
I think we are in Rat's Alley, where dead men lost their bones.
What is that noise?
The wind under the door.
What is that noise now? What is the wind doing?
Nothing. Again, nothing.
Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing?
I remember those are pearls that were his eyes.
Are you alive or not? Is there nothing in your head?
But, that Shakespearean rag. It's so elegant, so intelligent.
What shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my hair down, so. What shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do?
The hot water at 10, and if it rains, a closed car at 4, and we shall play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door.
When Lil's husband got demobbed, I didn't mince my words. I said to her myself,
Hurry up, please. It's time.
now, Albert's coming back. Make yourself a bit smart. He'll want to know what you done with that money he gave you. To get yourself some teeth. He did, I was there. You have 'em all out, Lil, and get a nice set, he said. I swear. I can't bear to look at you, and no more can't I. I said, and think of poor Albert. He's been in the army 4 years. He wants a good time. And if you don't give it to him, there's others will, I said. Oh, is there? She said. Something of that, I said. Then I'll know who to thank, she said. Gave me a straight look.
Hurry up, please, it's time.
If you don't like it, you can get on with it, I said. Others can pick and choose if you can't. But if Albert makes off, it won't be for lack of telling. You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique. And her, only 31. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's them pills I took to bring it off, she said. She's had 5 already, nearly died of young George. The chemist said it would be all right, but I've never been the same. You are a proper fool, I said. Well, if Albert won't leave you alone, there it is, I said. What'd you get married for if you don't want children?
Hurry up, please, it's time.
Well, that Sunday Albert was home. They had a hot gammon. They asked me in to dinner to get the beauty of it hot.
Hurry up, please, it's time. Hurry up, please. It's time.
Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Ta-da. Good night. Good night. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night.
3. The Fire Sermon. The river's tent is broken. The last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank. The wind crosses the brown land. The nymphs are departed. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. The river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of southern summer nights. The nymphs are departed, and their friends, the loitering heirs of city directors departed, have left no addresses. By the waters of Leman, there I sat down and wept.
Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song.
Sweet Thames, run softly, for I speak not loud or long. But at my back, in a cold blast, I hear the rattle of the bones, and chuckles spread from ear to ear. A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank, while I was fishing in the dull canal on a winter evening round behind the gas house, musing upon the king, my brother's wreck, and on the king, my father's death before him. White bodies naked on the low, damp ground, and bones cast in a little low, dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only, year to year.
But at my back, from time to time, I hear the sound of horns and motors, which shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Porter in the spring. Oh, the moon shone bright on Mrs. Porter and on her daughter. They washed their feet in soda water.
Oh, ces voix d'enfants chantant dans la coupole.
Twit, twit, twit. Jug, 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 jug. So rudely forced. Terreo.
Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter noon, Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, unshaven, with a pocket full of currants, CIF London, documents at sight, asked me in demotic French to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel, followed by a weekend at the Metropole.
At the violet hour, when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi, throbbing and waiting, I, Tiresias, though blind, throbbing between two lives, old man with wrinkled female breasts, can see at the violet hour, the evening hour that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from sea.
The typist, home at tea time, clears her breakfast, lights her stove, and lays out food in tins. Out of the window, perilously spread her drying combinations, touched by the sun's last rays. On the divan are piled, at night her bed, stockings, slippers, camisoles, and stays.
I, Tiresias, old man with wrinkled dogs, perceived the scene and foretold the rest. I, too, awaited the expected guest. He, the young man carbuncular, arrives, a small, house agent's clerk, with one bold stare, one of the low, on whom assurance sits as a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire.
The time is now propitious. As he guesses, the meal is ended. She is bored and tired, endeavors to engage her in caresses, which still are unreproved if undesired. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once. Exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response, and makes a welcome of indifference.
And I, Tiresias, have foresuffered all, and acted on this same divan or bed, I, who have sat by Thebes below the wall and walked among the lowest of the dead,
Bestows one final patronizing kiss, and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit. She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Well, now, that's done, and I'm glad it's over. When lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again, alone, she smooths her hair with automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone.
This music crept by me upon the waters, and all along the Strand, up Queen Victoria Street, oh, city, city, I can sometimes hear, beside a public bar in Lower Thames Street, the pleasant whining of a mandolin, and a clatter and a chatter from within, where fishmen lounge at noon, where the walls of Magnus Martyr hold inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold.
The river sweats oil and tar. The barges drift with the turning tide. Red sails wide to leeward swing on the heavy spar. The barges wash drifting logs down Greenwich Reach past the Isle of Dogs.
Vaya la 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 ya, va la 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 ya.
Elizabeth and Leicester beating oars, the stern was formed, a gilded shell, red and gold. The brisk swell rippled both shores, southwest wind carried downstream the peal of bells, white towers.
Vaya la 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 ya, va la 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 ya.
Trams and dusty trees. Highbury bore me. Richmond and Kew undid me. By Richmond I raised my knees, supine on the floor of a narrow canoe. My feet are at Moorgate, and my heart under my feet. After the event, he wept. He promised a new start. I made no comment. What should I resent? On Margate Sands, I can connect nothing with nothing. The broken fingernails of dirty hands. My people, humble people who expect nothing.
La la. To Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest. Burning.
4. Death by water. Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell, and the profit and loss. A current under sea picked his bones in whispers. As he rose and fell, he passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you.
5. What the thunder said. After the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying, prison and palace and reverberation of thunder in spring over distant mountains, he who was living is now dead, and we who were living are now dying with a little patience.
Here is no water, but only rock. Rock and no water, and the sandy road, the road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water. If there were water, we should stop and drink. Amongst the rock, one cannot stop or think. Sweat is dry, and feet are in the sand. If there were only water amongst the rock, dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit. Here one can neither stand nor lie nor sit. There is not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain. There is not even solitude in the mountains, but red, sullen faces sneer and snarl from doors of mud-cracked houses.
If there were water and no rock, if there were rock and also water, and water, a spring, a pool among the rock. If there were the sound of water only, not the cicada and drass-gry singing, but sound of water over a rock, where the hermit thrush sings in the pine trees, drip, drop, drip, drop, 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 drop. But there is no water.
Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. But when I look ahead up the white road, there is always another one walking beside you, gliding, wrapped in a brown mantle, hooded. I do not know whether a man or a woman. But who is that on the other side of you?
What is that sound high in the air? Murmur of maternal lamentation. Who are those hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is the city over the mountains, cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air? Falling towers, Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London.
Unreal.
A woman drew her long black hair out tight and fiddled whisper music on those strings, and bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat their wings and crawled head downward down a blackened wall, and upside down in air were towers, tolling reminiscent bells that kept the hours, and voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted wells.
In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing over the tumbled graves, about the chapel. There is the empty chapel, only the wind's home. It has no windows, and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the roof tree. Cocorico, cocorico. In a flash of lightning, then a damp gust bringing rain.
Ganga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain, while the black clouds gathered far distant over Himavant. The jungle crouched, humped in silence. Then spoke the thunder.
Duh. Datta, what have we given? My friend, blood shaking my heart, the awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract. By this, and this only, we have existed, which is not to be found in our obituaries, or in memories draped by the beneficent spider, or under seals broken by the lean solicitor in our empty rooms.
Dayadvam, I have heard the key. Turn in the door once, and turn once only. We think of the key, each in his prison, thinking of the key. Each confirms a prison. Only at nightfall, ethereal rumors revive for a moment a broken Coriolanus.
Damyata. The boat responded gaily to the hand expert with sail and oar. The sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when invited, beating obedient to controlling hands.
I sat upon the shore, fishing with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lands in order?
London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down.
Poi si scosse nel fuoco che li affina. Quando fiam uti Chelidon, oh, swallow, swallow, le prince d'Aquitaine à la tour abolie.
These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Why, then I'll fit you. Hieronymo's mad again. Datta, Dayadvam, Damyata.
Shanti.
Shanti.
Shanti.